Hi everyone, I'm Michael from Dillinger's New York and Michael Dillinger Tours. We're here in the New York Harbor because we are about to visit Liberty Enlightening the World, or as she's known to her many fans, the Statue of Liberty. The Statue of Liberty sits in the middle of the New York Harbor and welcomes every ship that comes into the harbor from the Atlantic Ocean. Now, the statue was a gift, a birthday gift from the people of France to the people of the United States of America. They gave us the statue for America's 100th birthday. Now, why would the French want to do that? Well, the friendship between our countries goes back to the very beginning. During the American Revolutionary War, we were really struggling at that point during the war, and in 1778, the French decided they would step in and help us. They gave us military and naval support. They gave us the Marquis de Lafayette to help marshal the troops, and in 1781, finally, Lord Cornwallis surrenders, the revolution is over, and we have won. And thank goodness, right? I mean, if we had lost the Revolutionary War, wow, would things be different? I mean, if we had lost the revolution, we'd be sitting around and we'd be serving things like tea with cucumber sandwiches and warm beer. So we really owe the debt of gratitude to the French. In 1789, we finally have our Constitution in place. And George Washington is sworn into office as the first U.S. president right here in New York City down on Wall Street. Now, the French are looking at this at the time and they think, wow, those Americans, they really pulled it off. They got rid of the monarchy, they got a constitution, they got a president, they're a real republic. And you know what? We helped them out. Maybe we should help ourselves now too, and we'll become a republic. And that is what they do. These new republics have their little ups and downs. I mean, here in the US, we have the American Civil War, which almost tears the country in two. And over in France, well, they got a little shaky start. They lost the republic, then they got it back, and then they lost it again. When Louis Napoleon Bonaparte, president of the French Republic, found out that the Constitution would not allow him to run for re-election, he says, that doesn't really work for me. So he decides to throw out the French Constitution, make himself emperor, and create the Second French Empire. 5 years after our Civil War, the Second French Empire falls, and France is on its way to establishing a new republic. In order to promote this new republic and gain allies, this gentleman, Edouard de la Boulaye, decides that it would be a great idea if the people of France celebrated America's 100th birthday. This would be a joint celebration with the people of both republics. It would remind America of what a great ally France had been, and it would strengthen the bonds of friendship between our two countries. Now, how they decided it would be a statue that would celebrate America's 100th birthday, that came about when de la Boulaye met this gentleman, Frederick Auguste Berthollet. Now, Berthollet was an artist and a sculptor, and he was obsessed with stories about monuments from the ancient world, things like the lighthouse at Alexandria and the Colossus of Rhodes. And his great dream in life is to create a giant statue with the source of light. So anytime there's an event that happens anywhere in the world, Berthollet is saying, hey, what about doing a giant statue holding a lamp? Well, he's never really taken seriously until he meets up with de la Boulaye. In 1871, Berthollet travels to the United States to pitch the idea of the statue to politicians and to newspaper publishers. The idea is that the people of France will fund the building of the statue, but the people of America will fund the building of a base or a pedestal for the statue to stand on. Once he returns to France, Berthollet settles on a model for the statue and design. It's going to be modeled after the Roman goddess Liberty holding a torch in her right hand. And the statue is going to be made out of copper, very thin copper too. It's about the thickness of 2 pennies pressed together between your fingers, just like this. But the problem is then, how do you get that to stand up? What kind of support is going to be needed to support those thin sheets of copper? To solve that problem, they turn to the French engineer Alexander Gustave Eiffel. Now, you may recognize the name because he also built a very famous tower in Paris. And Mr. Eiffel says, well, we could just build a tower and we could build the structure that we could hang the sheets of copper on the outside of the tower. And he designs an interior space that will not only support the statue, but it will actually allow visitors to go inside and climb up to the top of the statue. The engineering is figured out. Construction begins at Berthollet's workshop outside of Paris. And in the workshop, they're working simultaneously on different sizes of the statue as they take measurements and decide what it is they need to make the full size. And once each piece is finished, they move it outside and they begin to construct the statue piece by piece outside the workshop. When the statue is finally complete, it will be taken apart and will be packed up into 214 crates and ready to be shipped over here to the United States. On our side, things weren't going that well. Okay, we were way behind the French. As the French were packing up the statue, we were still trying to get the money to finish the base. Money was in short supply. The big donors that were dependent on to give to big public works, they weren't coming out with the cash. I mean, their attitude was, well, you know what, the base, it's really part of the statue, and the French, they should pay for the base too. And, you know, if they don't pay for the base, this is only half a gift. Who do they think they are? They've got some nerve. And things were not looking good. In fact, it was so bad that we were about to tell the French not to send the statue. We were going to say thanks, but no thanks. We just can't cut it. And that's when Joseph Pulitzer enters the story. Joseph Pulitzer, the founder of the Pulitzer Prize, he was a newspaper publisher. He had a newspaper here. It was the New York World, which later was renamed the World. And he thought it would be a terrible thing if we refused the statue. And so he said, well, forget about all those prominent people with money. He said, I believe that ordinary Americans will actually support the statue. I believe it so much that I promise that if anybody wants to donate to the statue, I will publish their name on my front page, and it doesn't matter how much money anybody gives. A single penny will get your name on my front page. Well, back in those days, there was no television, there was no internet, no nothing. People actually dreamed of seeing their name in a big city newspaper. And you know, within 6 months, 120,000 Americans had donated to the statue. We had the money and we said, send her over. The statue arrived here. She was like a giant IKEA project. I mean, there were 350 pieces and we had to assemble it ourselves. It took quite a while, but finally, on October 28, 1886, the statue was ready for her unveiling. Now, when you look at it, we had missed that 100th birthday by a little more than 10 years at that point, but that didn't stop us. We still had a giant celebration to welcome the statue when she was done. The plans called for a ceremony, a dedication ceremony out of the Statue of Liberty, followed by a 21-gun salute. Cannons all along the shore and on all these ships out in the harbor were going to set off a 21-gun salute. And after that, there was going to be a fireworks display. They scheduled the ceremony for just around sunset so that there would be a wonderful fireworks display after the 21-gun salute. And almost everybody took off the day from work that day. It was a big holiday-type atmosphere, and even those that couldn't get off got into the spirit of things. In fact, the office boys who worked in the financial brokerage companies, they were not allowed to be off that day. And so as the parade passed their office buildings on Lower Broadway, they opened their windows and they started to throw paper out the windows down onto the parade, thus establishing our ticker tape parade tradition. But not everybody was happy about the statue. The suffragettes, who had been working for years to gain voting rights for women, were very unhappy about the statue. They were protesting the idea that a woman was being held up as a symbol of liberty when women were not free to vote. They were also upset because, other than Berthollet's wife, no women were invited to the ceremony at the statue itself. Now, out at the statue, all these dignitaries had gathered. There was a giant French flag draped over the face of the statue. And the plan was that after the inaugural speech, which was to be given by William Evarts, he was the U.S. Senator and he was the chairman of the American Statue of Liberty Committee. After he finished, there was going to be a signal given by Berthollet's assistant to Berthollet. Berthollet was up at the top of the statue, and he was going to be given a signal. He was going to drop the flag. And when the flag dropped, that was the signal for every boat in the harbor to start the 21-gun salute. So Evarts has just started his speech. And shortly after he begins his speech, the flag falls. And that sets off this 21-gun salute. It goes on for 30 minutes, effectively drowning out Evarts' entire speech. Now, the official story goes like this. Berthollet's assistant was waiting. Everett took a big pause, supposedly to take a breath. That must have been some breath, because Bertoldi's assistant thought that that pause was the end of the speech. He gives the signal, and the flag drops. But you know, there's another story to this too. There's another version of what might have happened. So the suffragettes, they had actually hired their own boat. They weren't invited to the ceremony, but they thought, we're going to make our feelings known. They hired a boat. They went out to by the island where the statue is, and they're circling the island. And as Everett begins his speech, someone on the boat fires off a pistol. Bertoldi thinks that is the signal, and he drops the flag, effectively giving the women the last word. The noise and the celebration continues into the night with the fireworks display. And since that day, the statue has stood in our harbor for over 130 years as a symbol of hope and a reminder of promises still to keep.